Greetings and welcome to the PSP Success series. I'm Rosie, and today we'll be discussing the first chapter from your Professional Supervised Practice, the diagnosis. This and the next 5 videos cover everything related to the development of your PSP, especially in terms of content and form. So make sure to watch them all. Don't forget, this is a 10 video series we strongly recommend you to watch, especially if you're about to begin your PSP journey or have any question in the process. Don't forget to like this video for it to be saved in your liked videos, and also to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done it yet. Special thanks to USAC for the space. Take in consideration, this series is being developed parallel to COVID-19 situation, so if all activities are being held in the campus again, there might be some variations. That being said, here is what you need to remember. Find in the description a document with the outline to work on it. Before starting directly with the diagnosis, you must know there is a format authorized by Facultad de Humanidades for the presentation of your final report, and that's the one you and your advisor must stick to. We'll be breaking down each of the elements your diagnosis includes based on this format. But before, remember, each chapter needs to be first planned and then designed, and finally evaluated. If you miss any of those stages, your PSP won't be complete. Therefore, you'll encounter many issues, and success is less likely to become your reality. If you'd like a clearer idea about planning and evaluation, go back to video 3. You'll find the structure for your final reports in terms of generalities and the plans and evaluations. All necessary information about APA has been included in video number 5, so make sure to interact with it so you don't miss any tip and waste valuable time. According to Normativo del Ejercicio Profesional Supervisado, your first chapter, meaning the diagnosis, must include number 1, community or institutional context, depending on what it is, a community or an institution, and within, name of the institution, type of institution, geographic location, vision, mission, policies, objectives, goals, organizational structure, and resources. There are some aspects to consider according to the Normativo del Ejercicio Profesional Supervisado. These aspects are geographic location, like map, size, weather, social composition, like schools, hospitals, customs, historical background, like first inhabitants, importance, events, and people, economic situation, like productivity, labor conditions, transportation, and means of communication, politics, like groups and administration, philosophical conception, like churches, religions, values, and competitivity. Similar purposes with different approaches. All this if you're focused on a community. In case you were focused on an institution, the aspects must be institution identity, like characteristics of its nature, character, and purpose, historical background, the chronological presentation from its foundation until today, users, people who work there or have access there, infrastructure, description of the place, including all details, social involvement, determination of how involved is the institution with the development of the community, finances, comprehension of the economical flow of the company, labor policies, definition of the procedures for the hiring of people, administration, all the processes and human resources involved in the operation of the company, institutional environment, interpersonal communication, attitudes, values, beliefs, among other aspects, and finally, other criteria. Other than the previous ones, depending on the nature of the institution, something like logistics or technology. But of course, all the information and the following in the next point, the list of lacks, your problems, all of them must be determined by the proper selection and application of techniques. Number 2, the techniques used for diagnosis, which will vary based on the approach you decide to give to your research. The most common and accurate are observation, interviews, surveys, case studies, among others. Choose the ones you believe will provide you with more insights about the institution or community. Remember, your instruments should be first authorized by your advisor, and of course, the questions you decide to include must cover the 8 sectors of research: administrative, community, curriculum, financial, human resources, political, philosophical, and legal. Your instruments must cover the selected sample. Remember, all the people involved in your institution or community represent the universe. The people you're mostly interested in represent your population. And lastly, those who collaborate with your instruments represent the sample. This sample may vary in size. Here is a list of samples based on the number of people involved. www.kempro.org/sample size determination using Crush and Morgan table. Based on the results you obtain from the application of those instruments, you'll determine the list of lacks. Number 3. Understood as anything the institution doesn't have. Anything that is not working properly, whether it has ever worked or not, or anything that is preventing the institution from achieving certain institutional goals. Some examples could be absence of supporting material showing students step-by-step processes related to professional supervised practice, or there is not enough motivation, commitment, and responsibility from students once they are working on their professional supervised practice. This is a table and contains not only the lacks but also its problematization, inquiry problem, meaning you'll come up with an information question that represents a problem that requires a solution and that has an answer that could increase the possibilities for a solution. Just next to each question is the hypothesis action, an utterance that proposes a solution along with the action, an if-then statement. This will later represent your intervention project, so you better take the time and analyze them pretty well before including any. There could be more than one hypothesis action per inquiry problem. For the lacks previously mentioned, the inquiry problems could be: how can students have access to supporting material showing step-by-step processes related to professional supervised practice? Or how can students working on their professional supervised practice maintain a motivated, committed, and responsible feeling? And the hypothesis actions could be respectively: if supporting material showing students step-by-step processes related to professional supervised practice is proposed, then Sección de Idiomas can share it with students. Or if a set of meetings is planned and included in the yearly schedule from Sección de Idiomas to encourage students in their professional supervised practice, then the levels of motivation, commitment, and responsibility can increase. Once you've finished determining all the lacks, inquiry problems, and hypothesis actions, it's now time for you to conduct the analysis and prioritization of problems. Number 4. Here, you'll translate your lacks into problems, and you'll prioritize them numerically in terms of scope, urgency, interest, resources. You could determine some other criteria that could lead you into identifying what's the problem that needs to be solved the soonest. This table is normally evaluated in a scale from 1 to 4, and all the totals are compared to see which problem is the most urgent, with the majority of resources, scope, and interest. An example could be students' ignorance about step-by-step processes related to professional supervised practice. 3 in terms of urgency and importance, 4 in terms of scope, and 2 in terms of resources. This must be done with all the problems, same number of problems, and lacks. Whew, are you scared? Don't be! You've done this before, and we're about to finish with Chapter 1. So keep on watching, you're doing great. Based on the prioritization, you'll have the problem considered as the most important to solve, and you'll have the possible solution based on the hypothesis action. So now it's time to determine if the possible solution is actually feasible, viable, and desirable. This you'll determine it with an analysis. Of course, a feasibility, viability, and desirability analysis. This is basically a series of questions that will determine whether the solution has authorization from the institution, is viable, there is existence of the necessary resources for its completion, is feasible, and of course, the institution wants that solution, is desirable. Just as an important point here, something could be authorized, not necessarily wanted. So the solution should look to point to something that is not only possible to authorize, but is something that the institution really needed from the point of view of them as well. As it's pretty logic, for you to conduct this analysis, you must first present your proposal to the authorities, and based on what you discuss with them, you will answer the questions. As you'll create the questions, have this in mind. The must-have questions are: is there an authorization from the institution to conduct the project? Are all the necessary requirements fulfilled so the project is completed? And of course, is there any resistance from the institution to conduct the project? If the answer to the last question is yes, you must not continue with the project and determine a different solution. Remember, critical thinking is your main ally here. Continue creating the next questions, always in terms of technical, how, when, where, or how long, market, basically the demand, economical, the expenses in general, and financial, the funding sources. Depending on the nature of your project, questions related to religion, environment, culture, and even society could be included. Some examples are there financial resources for the creation of the project? Are there extra funds for the unexpected situations? Does the project satisfy the needs of the educational community? Is the project accessible to the educational community? Is there enough time to execute the project? Does the project count with the multi-sector opinions? Does the project have efficient personnel to execute it? Is the scope of the project well structured? And that's it. Just kidding. No, but this is just a matter of a few more seconds. You must include your selected problem and research line. That means an extended explanation of the problem you chose, the reason why you chose it, explain the previous tables, all the roots, even the answers to the questions. Those represent your research line. Basically, a summary of all the studies you did along the diagnosis. And finally, state the selected solution. What your hypothesis action proposed, but really a little extended, and not as an if-then statement, but as an assertion of what you're planning to conduct. You can even present the name of your project in this space. Next step will be, oh no, this time you're all done. Just like that, you completed chapter 1. Oh, but don't stress. This was the hardest. Next ones will be a little simpler. So, what are you waiting for? Go and watch the next videos. This is you in the way to your PSP success. This was Rosie. See you in our next video.